But we do have a quorum, correct?
Yes, I think we do. So we can actually start.
All right. And I call the meeting to order and declare a quorum.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
I second that.
And the first item on the agenda is I need a motion to suspend the rules so we can, right?
I think we need one, excuse me, 1 second. We do need to have the suspension of the rules. Oh, you were just doing that. I'm sorry. Mhm.
So I just need a motion, correct, from somebody to suspend the rules so that we
Correct.
can participate virtually,
Yes.
or electronically, or by telephone. Could somebody make that motion?
Motion to suspend the rules.
Right, Derek's made that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Do I need a voice vote on this? Is that fine?
Roll call vote, please.
A roll call vote. Wonderful.
Archana Sood,
Aye.
right, Amanda Nagola,
Okay.
right, Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Right, Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
right, Cherie Lackey,
Aye.
and Derek Ohanian.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, and Samantha Oldfry.
I was wondering, aye.
Thank you. Perfect.
All right, wonderful. And then the next item on the agenda is the 2021 Social Services Funding Committee discussion and allocation recommendations. So with that, I'll need a motion to open discussion and approve recommendations. Do I have a motion?
I move that we discuss the allocation and recommendations for the 2021 social services funding.
Perfect, thank you, Amanda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Perfect. Was that either Derek or Cherie?
Was Derek that I wrote down. So
Perfect, wonderful. All right.
With the committee's permission, I'd like to share my screen.
do we
would
need
be
a roll
great.
call vote on that? First, Jessica,
I
to
apologize, you're right, we do. Archana Sood,
Aye.
right, Amanda Nagola,
Oh, I'm sorry. We wouldn't have a roll call yet, just because.
oh, you're
we're
right.
just
I'm
opening the
sorry, because
discussion.
we don't have to vote on being able to discuss. I apologize.
Yeah.
great.
So you're right. We do have a very brief intro, which is also for our viewers, people attending the meeting, just of the sort of process that if Jessica could take us through that. And then we have a spreadsheet. And I just want to give a little bit of setup because historically we have a spreadsheet and, we put in the recommendations from the committee and it adjusts and shows if we're over or under and things like that. And it's going to be a little challenging because normally we have a better, you can see more on the screen. But our thought is we've got it divided into our two sections, case management and safety net. And we would start with one, go through that, and then make any adjustments because of course those sort of funding amounts, the allocations are soft caps, if you will. They were just to help the committee look at the funding to requests ratio, if you will, but we thought it would be useful to try to set that up. So if Jessica could just go through a couple slides here and then we'll let you look at the spreadsheet and ask if there are columns you would like us to hide if it's just too hard to see. Okay. Thanks for your patience. It's going to be an interesting one. We've never done this electronically before.
Okay, bear with me. Okay, so thanks so much. We did go over the agenda. I just wanted to briefly again highlight our three sources of funding. So it's our CDBG entitlement allocation for 2021 in the amount of $283,576. These funds are to be spent in calendar year 2021. We have $124,733 in our CDBG CV. So for these funds, there must be a specific tie back to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID. And then finally, we have our most flexible pot of money. It's our local human services fund in the amount of $763,373. Okay. Under the new service delivery model, we're going to be reviewing applications for case management and social services, or excuse me, safety net services. Allocations for support services will be made at a later date. And now let's get right to our discussion. And for that, Sarah's right, I am going to select a different screen.
This one we have to do in Excel. So,
No, sadly, we're still going to be in.
well, we'll be in Google Drive, but it's an Excel spreadsheet imported into Google Sheets. So
just
there it
like
is.
Excel, but just not as friendly. Okay. As Sarah mentioned, if I could just go over the highlights of some of this sheet. Here at the top under E5 is our total funding amount. When we go through, and I'm just going to walk us through, as the committee makes allocation recommendations, I'll be filling those in, and the sheet will automatically populate. So clearly, you know, we could give the James B. Moran Center $1 million. They would appreciate that. But I do this just to show that the amount we have remaining will change up at the top. Our case management subtotal will appear here in this black bar. This sheet will let us know how over or under we are, again, in that soft cap. So the committee isn't committed, but we're just using this as a marker. And then if we were to do the same for safety net, again, everyone can see that the amount populates under the safety net total, this black bar here under row 29. It lets us know how over or under the committee is. And then, as Sarah mentioned, we can't quite see the whole screen, but here at the bottom, if you notice support services just hanging on, we do have a soft cap of $130,320. And so this sheet will let us know if we've dipped into support services, and if so, by how much. Okay, so now let me make everything right again. Some other features of this sheet, and I'm happy to share these or hide these. In column B, we see the amounts that agencies requested in their original application. In column C, we have the average scores that committee members provided. In D, we have the amounts as impacted by those scores. I'm sorry. By that, I mean committee members provided individually through Zoom grants and like a draft award. and so in column D, we have the average of those draft awards that committee members provided, again, just as a piece of information. So, and then column F will show us how much is allocated, what percent based on the request, and then what percent is based on the average. So that's a lot, but I think once we're able to kind of go through it, the committee members will see how this spreadsheet works, assuming it's going to work well, which I've been working on it most of the day, so it better. And we can just start should people want to want to jump right in. Historically, when we make the original motion, we move either, award by award or in totals. So it's at the, we defer to the chair, however you'd like to see this done.
I mean, anything from discussion purpose, we can move line by line or award by award, and then I'm happy to vote in on based off of the subtotals, the category subtotals.
So we can do that. We typically make total or allocations for each, and then vote each one individually.
That's
if
fine.
everything has been discussed and nailed down.
Perfect. That's great.
So quick question. With the column B, that's the total 447,693 is the total requested, correct?
Correct.
And the total that we have to distribute is 450.
Correct.
So technically we could meet all of that, correct?
Technically, you could fund everybody at their request. It would be
Request.
unusual to go above that. When we were making those soft caps, we were just trying
Sure.
to give a sort of category
Yeah,
feel. We didn't
no,
want to
just
get down
wanted
to.
to, no, I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding the numbers
Yes.
correctly. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And then anything remaining would move down to the available amount for support.
Towards the end, it'll just get added to the next one.
Yeah.
Next one or
Right.
the bottom one?
Well, it would go to support services, but that could be put, that doesn't mean it has to go there. The committee can, again, choose to put it into safety net services if that were their desire. Safety net, just the way we didn't want to, the numbers are pretty close for the categories at full amount. There is no requirement that the full amount of either of those categories be used in those categories either,
Okay.
because you're balancing how you see the value of the programs in addition to the available dollars.
Okay.
Well, and
I had one-
for the purpose of the spreadsheet, the support services right now is just like a catch-all. So it looks like the largest pot, but it's going to dwindle as allocations are made. I'm sorry. And then Councilmember Burns had his hand up.
Yeah, I was just finishing up taking some notes, and so I missed the trying to see what category it's called. The averages. There's something that says something requests averages or something like that. What does that mean again?
The committee members scored the applications, and so the first set of numbers next to the request in column C is the average score. And one thing just to, we should make clear, in the case management category, the maximum score is 60. In the safety net services, the maximum score is 70. So there's a different scale. That's important for you to know. The column D is the average of all of the council, the committee members' scores for that.
I'm sorry, the committee members, so the committee members had the opportunity individually to provide an suggested allocation amount per application as
Right.
they scored. And so that's an average
Of those.
of those, yes.
And Derek,
And then,
oh, sorry, I'm sorry, Councilman Burns.
no,
continue.
it's fine. And then in the memo we received, there's something that says award average. Is that the same as 2021 or 2022 average, or does that mean something different? Or is that it's the same thing?
The award average is the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Derek,
Thank you. So for the support services section, is there some sort of imperative to have money left over for that? That's the only part that I'm unclear on.
Well, it is certainly something that is necessary to actually implement the structure of allowing case management agencies to access funding to provide specific services that are part of the case plans of the individuals or households they're working with. Is it absolutely required that there be money for it? No, but I don't believe that, you know, if we were to allocate all the funding to the categories of safety net and case management, we would be actually funding over agencies' requests, which is not generally something we've ever done.
If I can recommend an approach to this, just my thoughts on this is similar to what Archana was alluding to. We provide, our recommendation starts off with the 2021 request for the agencies for both sections. And then we look to see how much is left, which might be negative for the support services at the bottom. And then we adjust the the sections above to come to a point where we're satisfied with how much is left over for support services. And then we can use the average score plus the average recommendations, dollar average recommendations, to adjust the agencies above. That's what I think would work. But
Derek, can I state that back to you to make sure I understood what you were saying?
Yeah. So I was thinking is for column E, for each agency, we start off by entering in the 2021 request that they asked for. So in the case of YOU, 57,693, and then go down the list that way. Same thing with safety net services. And then we see how much we have left for support services, which would probably be a negative number. I think we'll be over, but I just need to see it. And then we start to adjust the case management and safety net services agencies, potentially reducing their reward values using their scores as well as the 2021 average that was provided to them until we get support services to a dollar amount that we're comfortable with. I don't know if that made sense.
Yes, it did. And I think, I mean, just looking at it very quickly, we would just be over by a couple $1,000s, it looks like, with that. But Amanda, you also had a question. I want to make sure.
Yeah, thanks. I was only going to offer that I think we should be mindful of that support services number, because we haven't opened that up and we don't know what people will need. So I would even advocate for like keeping it what it is or possibly increasing it. But just because we don't know what people will need. So I'd be leery of us cutting into that too much, which I think is supportive of what Derek was saying, but that would just be my part of it.
I think that's a very good point, Amanda. And I think it does align with what Derek was saying. So Jessica, is it possible to just copy and paste the 2021 request column B into column E and have Excel do the math for us? Because I at least am quite tired at the moment. Or Google Sheets do the math for us.
I mean, here's hoping. If it was Excel, I could say definitively. But if Google Sheets,
yay,
all right,
it worked.
Looks like we're working. Yeah.
And I apologize.
I'm
I want to
sorry.
make sure no one else had their hand raised. I didn't miss anybody else.
I apologize. Should I do the same thing for safety net?
Yes, sorry. And Councilman Burns, you had an inquiry?
Yeah, so the support services grant period hasn't opened yet. We don't.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct. We've had a number of meetings with agencies, including with the agencies that were moved into support services / enrichment services in our last meeting, because they didn't really fit in the categories that they had applied.
And so when we do this, I see that we are in aggregate when case management and safety net services, and I apologize if you can hear an infant, We are $1,520 over the original allocations for those two subcategories. And so, Derek, your recommendation was we then look at the, I guess I made an assumption that we could move that $2,300 and $7 from case management sort of down to that safety net to account for that 3,827, and then try to figure out what to do with that, how to reduce for that 1,520. However, we could obviously reduce further and give more room to social safety net, support services as well. But that sort of gives us an idea of where we are based off of the original requests.
Right.
And Jessica or Sarah, I wanted to inquire, because there are certain limitations on the funding, specifically the COVID funding, are you all able to, I mean, were you comfortable with how some of the agencies provided data on that fund, on their requests to sort of meet that piece comfortably to make sure that we're in compliance with funding limitations?
Yes, very easily.
Okay, wonderful.
The one category that will always be local funds is support services, because that we can't use our flexible ways of procuring that with our federal funds. They're kind of a pain in the neck for that.
Makes sense. And Councilman Burns, did you have another inquiry, or was it just from before?
No, yeah, let me lower my hand.
No, perfect. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't that I made sure that we had opportunity to hear your inquiry or your points. And so with this, we're slightly over for these two categories. Amanda, you had sort of indicated, obviously, there's so much, and we don't quite know yet what the need for support services will be. So not really an interest in diving in or dipping into that 130,000. And I apologize since it's been updated, but that allocation, and then so this is sort of where we are. You also indicated potentially wanting, or I thought you did, potentially wanting to maybe leave a little extra for that subcategory, given that we don't know. But that might have been my understanding of what you were saying, not necessarily your point.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was advocating for that point. I'm not married to the idea of overfunding the support services, but I guess I'd hate for, the applications to come in and us not be able to fund those nearly, if we're able to fund everything 100%, could we maybe decrease by 1% across the board or something like that, such that we could also still fund the support services, I guess would be an idea.
And is it possible, Jessica, if we go through and do 2020 allocations, let's say we do 95%, and I'm just pulling a number, I'm not advocating. Let's say we do 95% of the request for safety net and case management services. We get the applications for support services. Are we able to go back and adjust if we overfunded support services too much? Are we able to later increase those awards?
Yes, we could certainly increase those awards. We would, it'd probably be done as an amendment to their agreement, but it absolutely could be done. And I just also want to point out that because originally we had more for support services, partly because some of the support services, obviously, these are things that are being procured and we can't carry over all our money. We're getting remarkably close to 2022. So kind of in an interesting situation there.
Yeah, yes, good point. Councilman Burns, and then I see her as well, Archana.
China was actually first. So
Oh, was she? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Just maybe I missed it. Can I ask, and sorry if I'm making you repeat, how you got the 130 for the support services, the estimate?
What we had done in our last meeting was we had adjusted. Originally, we had started off with, at the beginning of the year, we estimated that we would allocate 40% of money in case management, 40% in safety net, and 20%. Because of the way allocations came in and the late time of year and the ability to fund safety, the support services out of 2022 sooner, we made a suggested reallocation, but again, that's just a soft cap, and so we don't want you to feel bound by that. But it was just a looking at what the actual applications were. We are in discussions with some of the support services agencies that have expressed an interest in that, and also the agencies that were moved into that category. And if they can track that they have worked with clients in their what would be a support service, that we can track to a agency that is a case management agency, we would recommend that we figure out a way to compensate them for that, for work done in 2021, because many of the agencies will be used, this money will be applied against work already done based on just where we are in the fiscal year. So it's a really unusual balancing act this year. I hope that makes sense. My explanation made sense.
Any follow-up? Or did that address your, perfect, thank you. And Councilman Burns?
Have we awarded support services grants before, or similar grants to what we expect to award this year? And if so, what were those requests? What were examples of those requests?
This is the first year we've used this allocation method. So it is, and that's why we're doing it so late. We had a lot of changes this year, and we've been going through this process. So we really don't have any history with it at all.
If you were to guess what type of requests we made, just examples, could you think of anything that we may receive? What type of requests, and broadly speaking?
Well, there are there are multiple ways that the support services funding could be allocated or could be accounted for, but it's basically the idea is that it would be on a fee-for-service basis for whatever services are provided to someone in case management. For example, an agency that has a very a program that would fit the needs of someone in case management might be referred to that. And what we would calculate is we'd work with the agencies ahead of time. The idea is to talk to the case management agencies, find out the services that they are looking to refer to, find the providers, and calculate a fee for service that we can then say, we estimate that there will be X referrals to this agency. So we would do an agreement of up to this much spending. They would be compensated as individual referrals were identified, not necessarily literally paid only then, but in some cases maybe paid a portion of the expected grant, and then they would spend against that, as because it's very hard. It's a cash flow thing for the agencies, and we don't want to penalize them and say you only get paid after somebody has completed the use of your services. That's but it would be a way of funding them so that when an agency gives a referral, there would be some funding that comes with the referral so that they have the funding to, in essence, provide the service. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. sometimes the explanation seems a little convoluted, so I'm just double checking.
And Sarah or Jessica, do you have, for the agencies that we moved over to support services, do you have a number of sort of what they originally requested that might serve as sort of a helpful component as we're thinking about the potential requests amounts we might get for that category? And with that, as you're, I'm sure, searching, Derek, you had an inquiry.
Actually, I had a similar question what Councilman Burns asked, and as well as you, Samantha. And so I'm just sort of trying to process what everyone's talking about right now.
And I'm getting those numbers for you. Just hang on.
I've got them actually.
Oh, you do?
So
Okay, good.
currently We've got 4 applicants under the supplemental services category. But again, as Sarah said, because we didn't open up our support services application, we know that there are other community partners who would like to join that conversation. But if the 4 applicants in this most recent round of funding were to be eligible for support services, those requests totaled $128,800.
And so we know there are others out there, of course, because we didn't open up this application process yet. And so we would be looking at potentially, if we were to fund fully for safety net services and case management at 100%, we'd most likely be funding the support services, which, important to note, make case management successful at a rate of less than 100% of the request. And I think that might have been potentially, Amanda, again, if I'm putting words in your mouth, please jump back in. But I think that was sort of the point and concern you were making. And Councilman Burns.
Sarah, have we ever used funding to support kind of internal City of Evanston initiatives or efforts? I'm thinking about, our outreach workers, provides case management. Have we ever used this funding to support that work?
No, the purpose of this committee's work is for funding that is basically allocated for external agencies. We fund, at one point, we used to fund both the Summer Youth Employment Program and the Certificate of Rehab, partly out of CDBG, but we made an internal decision that those programs should be funded fully from the city, in the city budget, and partly just because it makes it much, it's a management tool as well, because if the city, what we end up doing is we're trying to, how can I explain this? Because our funding is, if our funding is allocated for those programs, they're in the budget as fully funded by the city. And so it doesn't really necessarily make the best use of our total funding that the council is looking at allocating. Does that make sense?
What if one of our departments wanted to, this is slightly different, but one of our departments wanted to do a fee for hire using the social services, available money from the social services grant? Would that be something to consider, or it would still be complicated in terms of reporting?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. We did say that our case managers could access support services for their clients. And we also have said that we want to make sure that case management organizations that are doing case management that have other sources of funding for that, but qualify as robust case management, will ultimately be able to access the support services money as well. Because if somebody already has case management funding, but they still lack that ability to get their clients into services, we don't want them to not have that ability. And I will be frank, we're not going to be fully implementing this with the remainder of 2021. I think we're going to see some real shifts in 2022. And we are going to recommend that the committee look at 2022 funding once we get our CDBG grant, so we know what our total amount is, and so that we can make better decisions based on total budget and everything all at once. So we're really looking at, case management, safety net, and the supportive services all at the same time, so we can better allocate. So this is a not very smooth transition to the new funding method, largely just due to the nightmare of COVID and all the other things and changes going on. So
Thank you.
Derek.
Thank you. So from everything that I'm hearing, I think we all have an interest in making the support services estimate of $130,000 whole. And so what I think that would then result or require from us is then to keep moving the conversation forward, to develop some sort of methodology now to find that $15,000 within the other two cost categories, other two program categories.
I do believe it is 1,500.
1,500? I thought I saw 15,000. Isn't that what it says there?
Oh, increased T.
13,000.
$158 if we want to be absolutely.
Decreased by, oh, okay. I guess
one consideration might be to ask if there are any awards that individual committee members might want to provide a difference from the request.
there were a few items that I had, and I think it sort of ties in, Sarah, to what you were outlining as we think of 2022 as well. Obviously, both the HAC case management is a new program and has not begun. Neither has, my understanding is, the Metropolitan Family Services. And so when we think at least of 21 and 2022, I mean, sort of fully funding those twice would be a problem, or could be problematic in the sense that my understanding is these programs don't exist in 21 at this point. And so, you know, there's something to be said for those two programs. And then there's also with, I believe it's Youth and Opportunity. Can you scroll up a little bit, Jessica? Yes. You know, this is a new application process. We did split out safety net services and case management. Is there potentially a little bit of overlap there with that one organization? It's worth sort of, you know, highlighting as well. Those were the things that I, in my review, thought of.
I'll just make the note that we would look at the housing authority's request is, you know, those two that are new, whatever level, you know, they will actually be spending whatever they're allocated based on their real expenditures. So there's one way to look at it is to say, hey, allocate less than the full amount that would still carry them a little bit into 2022, or not fund them. I mean, or there's crossover, in other words. You're absolutely right on that. I'm going to let Jessica maybe talk a little more about YOU.
Sure. So it is staff's hope. So YOU submitted an application for safety net services that cited primarily the majority of the population they work with, but then the application itself spoke to a population of about 50 homeless youth. And it's our belief, although we need to work with the agency, that the 50 homeless youth, once they're engaged in services, would then also move into case management services through YOU's case management program. So you're absolutely right. their staff would be working very closely with the agency to understand specifically how many people were served in safety net, how many participants are served in case management, and what that overlap looks like. It also appears that the request would go to support YOU staff. And it appears from the budgets from both programs that the staff is very similar. So that is another area where staff would like to work with the agency to understand the differences. I don't know if that answered the question.
It did from my perspective. And I do think when I, sort of noting that there are these two new programs that don't exist yet, and we're in October of 21, and then potentially the area of some duplication. I would advocate for perhaps a more targeted reduction from the request rather than an across the board reduction, since there are some programs we know have not even been initiated yet. So that would be sort of my initial thought, but obviously I committee members. Amanda?
I think a targeted, look at the funding is helpful and useful. And I guess I also want to just point our attention to, some of the agencies really are not close to the top of the score. And so maybe we should be looking at those, maybe the bottom 2 or 3, I don't know, we could decide as a group, but maybe we should be looking at those also as targeted reductions as well.
Great point, Amanda. And when you look at that, especially for case management, we're talking about the same too. I think from scoring, so 2 reasons to really, have that targeted approach, both from scoring and then just from program initiation. And then when you look at that for the safety net services, that would be the North Shore Senior Center, and then the Child Care Network would have the 2 lowest scores.
I would like to point out one thing that was just because we moved them into those categories.
That's right.
But they were scored on the 60 number scale, not the 70. So they still would be lower than, somewhat lower, but they aren't quite as low. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for pointing that out. I'm going to go to Councilman Burns, and I'll go to you, Derek, as well.
Yeah, I was under Metropolitan Family Services. I had in my notes a question mark because I had never heard of them before, and I know most of our organizations. So this is a new program, a new organization, or both?
No, actually, they're a long-time recipient of mental health board funds. I'll let Jessica give you a little more background.
So Family Focus has been a longtime recipient of mental health board funds.
No, Metropolitan Family Services.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Metropolitan Family Services. The city has funded their Parenting Fundamentals class, which is a 9-week class that typically operates out of the Joseph Hill Center. And it works with parents who either have had or are at risk of having DCFS involvement. And it was through that class that parents sort of formed community and could then access deeper case management services. Historically, this program has served a large Latinx population, and so they do have bilingual staff. And this request, it's a new request for a family coach who would be responsible for helping families enroll in supportive services that they might not otherwise be able to navigate that process of benefits enrollment on their own. So while that position is not specifically a case management position, we know that the bulk of the work Metropolitan Family Services does is absolutely case management, and that's what we funded them for in the past through that parenting fundamentals class.
So just adding to that, a way of looking at it is this additional position makes them better able to help their clients access the supportive services that we are setting up in this program. But that is a new position. They are doing case management right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you feel like you know how to evenly apply that in future scenarios so that, you know what I mean? So that it's a standard that we can maintain in other.
You know what? I apologize.
No, go ahead.
I think that's a great question. And it sort of speaks to how agencies are going to be asked to report under case management and under safety net. And so there was a memo in the packet that talks about the requirements, but for case management agencies, we will be looking at the number of new participants they're able to enroll, the number of like service plans new service plans they're able to create per quarter, and look at outcomes and referral connections. And we do believe that Metropolitan Family Services will be able to provide the reporting that shows how households are accessing case management, creating service plans, and then moving forward through that process to help them become self-sufficient.
Another question somewhat related is, so in that, I think it was the case management criteria, it said ability to enroll new Evanston clients during a 12-month period. Evanston clients compromise significant percentage of total clients. So is new clients, is that the client is new, or their capacity has changed? It's new, their capacity has increased. They can take on more additional clients, or does it mean a new client at the individual level? What does enroll new Evanston clients during the 12-month period? What do we mean by that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We mean both and. We understand that agencies are working with Evanston residents because they've been working in the community for a long time, but we do want to understand the number of new Evanston residents that they're able to enroll at the start of our funding period, with the hope that city funding allows them to expand their capacity to serving Evanston residents, either by supporting staff working with the population or increasing staff. Does that make sense? So,
and the reason why I'm bringing it up, and I think this was in the memo, is with Infant Welfare Society, I would imagine because of space, they're capped at they have a certain capacity level that they're forced to maintain unless they're able to use these funds to increase the size of their facilities, which this wouldn't be enough to do that. So, and again, obviously, I love what Infant Welfare Society is doing. I'm just trying to make sure that we can apply this criteria evenly for future requests. And so, what was the thinking behind Infant Welfare Society and putting them in case management?
Well, go ahead. Actually, Jesse, you go ahead and explain.
Sorry, because that is a great point. And we might see some shifts as we have time to see this process in action. You're absolutely right. Infant welfare is not using these funds to expand their physical nursery. They are limited to the number of childcare slots that they have. They only have 16. We do know that households, children, move through the program as participants graduate or leave the program. But they are restricted in that sense.
one of the challenges is when you have a small program, a small number program, you can't really like say, oh, well, let's see, can everybody get 20% more? You know, but the nature of their program is as they get, as Jessica says, as somebody sort of graduates from the program and moves on out of school, and their children do, then they get new people in. So they do have limits on how much turnover they can have based on the nature of the physical space for childcare. But I think they still meet the spirit of taking on new clients just by the ones who graduate, and they continue to fill those needs. And they do provide a very, very wide range of services and supports for their clients that fit the case management model.
I can explain. I want to move it around to let some other folks ask their questions, so I can explain this more later. But I think we might want to consider, just for the sake of ordering this or putting everybody in the right positions, putting them to social or the safety net instead of case management. I'd love to. We could talk about that further later. I want to move it around a bit, but that was another note I had. We might want to move them down to safety net, but let's move it around a bit. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilman. Derek.
Thank you. So I agree with Samantha and Amanda's recommendation on, if we are going to withhold some of the funding requests, we do it more in a targeted manner. And I think potentially using the scores that agencies received on their applications in column C would be could be a justified way to do that. But the one request I have here, Jessica, maybe for you, since you're driving this, could you, if it's not too much trouble, would you be able to create a column right next to column C that gives them a percentage score based on what their score was out of? Because that'll help us normalize the data to make it easier to compare. So I think, because you said like some of them were scored out of 60, but they're in the other section, and some were scored out of 70 and they're in the other section. I just want to see a clear ranking based on what they did, or based on how they did. And then can you sort it based on those numbers as opposed to the application score there? If that makes, doesn't matter.
Well, we can try,
Yeah.
I have to say.
Yeah.
So let me make sure I'm understanding you. So we want to look at the percent based on the score? I'm so sorry. Let me try and think of a formula in my head. Tell me again, please.
Well, wouldn't it just be, so in this case, so YOU case management, was that based out of the 6? So was the top score in that category 60?
Yes.
So I would just do 57.25, yeah.
Okay, all of the agencies that are in case management now applied in case management, so they have been scored on that 60 score. I will try to create what the comparable score for Books and Breakfast, North Shore Senior Center, and Child Care Network would be if they were done on a 70 score. I'll just try to do the math here while we're working on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Derek, but I do think, to Sarah's point, because case management, they were all out of 60, it's going to get basically mirror their current ranking with their scoring. But where I think it will be particularly useful is in that safety net category, where we are comparing a few that were out of 60 to a much larger amount out of 70. So I think that focusing on the safety net services for that exercise, especially given the limitations, would be helpful. And
another thought might be to look at, in some cases, I'm not sure that the funding recommendations average out to the same sort of relationship of the scoring, because there are considerations where people might have thought something was a very important category and there weren't many applicants, and so maybe they scored a little lower or something like that. I'm not sure if that's something you want to try to take into consideration, or if I'm just muddying the thing, in which case you can ignore that.
Jessica.
Thank you. Wanted to say that historically, the mental health board or the mental health board, excuse me, used those scores to calculate recommendations and scores, for example, that were, let's say, 55 and above would be scored at like 90 or 95% of the ask. Scores sort of in that mid-range would be scored at, 80% of the ask, and then scores that were, and I'm just looking at natural breaks here, let's say in the 40s would be scored at like 70% of the ask. And I'm kind of making those numbers up based on what we have here. I'm not suggesting that the committee use that, but that is a way that the mental health board quantified requests and sort of married the scoring and requests. And so that's something that the committee could do maybe moving forward, or I might be able to create a formula quickly that could take that into consideration, if that speaks to Derek's point. I'm not sure how would that be useful to the committee?
Eric and others.
Yeah, I think, I mean, a question that I have hanging out on the side of my head here is, do we have to figure this out tonight? Because it seems like we're pretty uncertain on how to do this. And so if we take more time to figure that out, but I don't know what the timing or deadline, or maybe I may have missed that. Yeah.
No, I do think, and Jessica or Sarah, jump in if I'm wrong here, but we are quite behind schedule.
Yes.
As a committee. And so for these agencies and for their sort of like fiscal certainty, I do think the sooner we figure it out, the better. And perhaps what that may mean is, we might have to come back and revisit, but I do think their time is of the essence, given that where we are, and that there are certain requirements from the federal funding where it needs to be spent in 21. And so I think we're probably already on a pretty tight time frame for that, given
We are.
that it's October. Yeah.
I can just give you the rejiggered scores for Books and Breakfast, North Shore Senior Center, and Child Care Network, if they were just translated into a 70-point score, just mathematically. So let me give that. So Jessica, can you fill these in? Books and Breakfast would be 61.37. North Shore Senior Center would be 53.96. And Child Care Network would be 52.5. So it would
I apologize.
bump.
Yep, it would. So
It would bump Books and Breakfast up significantly. It would be just behind, just after Interfaith Action and before YWCA, based on that.
I think that was 53.96. Did you say that right, Sarah? It was 53.96?
Yes, 53.96.
yeah, 3.96. Thank you. And 61.37.
I mean, based off of what we know today and timing and the amount that we're talking about in terms of reduction, which is in the grand scheme of things, probably it is not a significant reduction to get to the target. Is it possible that we look at potentially these newer programs where this new staff has not been hired, and potentially YOU, where their applications appear as though there's some duplication, try to account for that 15,000 and change, and come up with recommendations so that we can make a recommendation. My understanding is it still has to go to council. There's quite a bit. And I think that these agencies, have been serving Evanstonians and the community without really knowing what their funding is going to be for 21 in a pretty uncertain time. And so I think moving forward and sort of targeting those and or potentially, I apologize, Amanda's great point earlier of those with the lowest score. So on case management, those are the same, but there are these others that have a lower score there.
From a staff standpoint, it would be very valuable if we could get allocations for the most part done. There's nothing that says you can't hold back some money that you simply want to give you more flexibility if that's something that you would like to do, like increase the category of supportive services to some number and then work back and subtract as well. But I think that the methodology that you just mentioned, looking at 2 agencies that would be basically starting new programs, so, would not be, if they were funded fully, we would be tracking their funding into 2022 because we're not going to count it against work not done. We don't do that with money. So that gives us some flexibility from that standpoint.
Would it be possible, and committee members, this is just an idea, and I don't know where the math shakes out on this, where we allocate or make a recommendation for allocation for the 2 new programs of potentially 30% or 50% of their request sort of start up, and we would revisit in 2022 because we need to make 2022 allocation recommendations as well. And then potentially look at a full request allocation for the other agencies and what that would do to the support services line. I think that would give us more than we would need. And then potentially we should HAC or Metropolitan Family Services come back with additional information. We could always adjust that allocation. This is just like an idea if others, Amanda.
Yeah, so maybe as a starting point, I might suggest maybe like 10% from YOU as a starting point, and maybe playing with the averages on the 4 lowest agencies. We don't have to go exactly with those averages. Maybe we could grant them more than the average, but kind of still shooting for around that 15,000 and change. That might be, that would take into account the work that's already been done in reviewing the, because YOU is rated very highly. I hate to cut too much from them, so.
Oh, I could not agree more. I apologize. I had spoken to them earlier, but when I was saying sort of that number of that 50%, it was just for the 2 new programs, which were also the lowest scored. But not for YOU. No.
Okay.
But maybe we could do another, so that would be, we would have, if we did the approach of giving these 2 new programs essentially 6 months of funding in 21, which they probably can't even spend 6 months of funding in 21, that would allow for every other agency to have full funding. So we wouldn't have to reduce funding from anybody else. And it looks like if you could scroll down, Jessica, just ever so slightly, we would actually have an additional, $42,000 within support services that we could either allocate to those 2 agencies should we get additional information, or if our grant requests come in much higher for that category, which we don't know what will happen, we have some flexibility there. So that's one approach. We could then do Amanda's approach too, but I will count. Jessica, is it possible to basically duplicate column F so we could sort of see the various options? And and you might not be able to. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
While you're figuring out tech, I'm going to go to Councilman Burns for his inquiry.
No, I just to help us see if there's any support. I want to say I support that approach. I think that makes sense.
Okay. And Councilman Burns, to be clear, the approach of funding the newer programs, which also have the lowest score, at half a year and then revisiting once we have more information on the support services, is that
Correct. I'm not quite clear on Amanda's approach. If she wants to repeat that, but yeah, I was more so meant I think funding the newer programs at 50% with the understanding that, as you said, they probably won't be able to get through that anyway. Makes sense to me.
all right? Wonderful.
I was gonna say, I think I misunderstood. I think when you mentioned it, 6 months of funding, that makes very good sense to me, and I support that also.
Okay, wonderful. Jessica?
So I wanted to say too that I did bring down HAC and Metropolitan Family Services by 50%. So the spreadsheet does reflect that. And I also just wanted to let the committee know that historically, YOU has served about just under 500 participants with awards of around 70,000, between 70 and 75. And if YOU were fully funded for both of their applications, it would present an overage that we would then want to see reflected in their capacity to serve participants. So we'd want to see their capacity increase to reflect anything over that 70,000.
And so Jessica, can you tell us what is that overage? I apologize, they're just above.
Well, yep, that's fair. Actually, and let me.
There are kind of two ways of looking at expanded service that we look at. One is depth of service, which is, like, and if we're putting, they've always had robust case management, but if more residents or households are getting robust case management, that would justify more funding because it's a more in-depth service over a longer period of time than just say the after school sort of safety net services, which really are giving, and I'm oversimplifying this obviously, but where a number of children, school-age children, actually all the way up through high school, have places to go after school and get help and support and homework and just socialization and all the benefits of being in after school programs. So we'd have to look at how that works out in terms of the numbers served in both of those programs kind of against. The goal is not to, if we're doing overall increases in funding, we hope to see increases of those two types of services. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you so
And
much.
one consideration would be to say, again, provide some funding. Obviously funding them, if you don't want to fund at a full level, we could work with them more and be able to come back and answer those questions.
Wonderful. That's thank you for highlighting all of that. And Jessica, it's you have your hand raised.
No, I'm sorry. I'm trying to lower it.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Sorry.
So then it sounds like there might be some more work that needs to be done with YOU given their request. And just the new structure. I think it's very much so the new structure of how grants have, the application process. So with this, Councilman Burns has already indicated there's some support. It gets us to the idea that there's funding for that social services, support services line. But from a staff recommendation standpoint or from a committee discussion point, should there B, further review, of YOU and that duplication sort of, to Amanda's point, maybe that 10% mark or something along those lines, or do we go with the full application or allocation and have staff work with the agency to ensure that access is expanded to this amount?
Yeah, staff would definitely work with the agency to understand the discrete population served. And I think we would come back to the committee with reports. We would do that for all of the applicants. And then, you know, it would just be up to the committee to use that information moving forward. I'm sorry, maybe I'm not. Is that helpful?
Yes. So I think I had made the recommendation for sort of where the allocations sit today or sit right now at this moment. Any further changes or recommendations, or would the committee like to move forward with how this stands at the moment? So to make sure we're hearing from everyone and that everybody has an opportunity to share their thoughts. Amanda, oh yes, sorry, now you're actually raising your hand.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know. I don't want to be nitpicky here, but just looking through the, you know, our report, the summary report, I can't help but just kind of hone in a little bit on the North Shore Senior Center that, you know, only 10% of those clients are Evanston residents and 48% of whom are people of color. And they were sort of lower on the list. And I just wonder if, you know, gosh, I mean, I want to fund everyone fully in some ways, but if I don't know if maybe there's some wiggle room there, but I don't know. I don't want to be the naysayer either. So
No, I think you raised a good point about a low service point of Evanston residents. And I mean, the idea of this is to support Evanston residents.
yeah, just a thought.
So would you be making a recommendation, Amanda, of like potentially, you know, a 90% allocation for them, or was there some percentage you had in mind?
I didn't have a specific percentage, but, and I know we don't necessarily need to cut, but it does seem like in terms of equity, maybe that is something that we should take into account. So.
And Councilman Burns?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, have we reached consensus on funding HACC and MFS at 50%? Are we all there?
Is there anybody who disagrees with that approach? I do not hear any disagreement.
And if so, then what is, we don't know what that leaves us yet, or we do know? I'm sorry, I think somebody's trying to talk. Is that you, Councilmember Reed? Okay. So I don't know what that leaves us at. I don't know what our goal is. Are we trying to, we're seeing where there's opportunities for reductions that make sense in general, but also to, the plan is to direct those funds for the support services.
Right.
So we would, if we funded HACC and MFS at 50%, what would that leave us for support services? What would be the total amount at that point?
170, oh, so sorry, Jessica.
Go right ahead.
$172,662 for the support services based off of those reductions. But you're absolutely right. I think that any reduction for safety net services or case management would increase what the committee would have for allocation for support services. Or we could go back and revisit initial allocations for the other two categories. So I think for Amanda's point, if perhaps we don't give North Shore Senior Center the full 30,000 they requested, what that would do is actually give the committee more room within the support services, but potentially to increase funding to some of those organizations, of which we don't have a great line of sight into how much they're going to ask for.
Yeah, so I agree with Amanda. I think the criteria and expectations should be strict enough where everyone, doesn't always meet the expectations and adjustments are made. And I do think that serving Evanston residents is important. There are some other criteria which I'll mention now because I think it's in line, but we can address it later. But agency, there was a note that it said this particular agency recognized that staff demographics do not reflect population served. Moving forward, that's something that I would really like us to enforce as much as we can. That's important. And also there was another one, agencies requesting funding may work in partnership with other agencies. I would love to see how we can enforce that a lot more strict, be more strict on the enforcement of that as well. I think that's important, that collaboration, that communication. I think we should move more towards requiring that in the future. But again, that's for a future discussion. But Amanda, I agree with your point.
And I just agree, Councilman Burns, with your point as well, of going forward as we think of scoring, as we think of what we prioritize as a committee, serving Evanston residents, having staff reflecting the community of which they're serving, and then also that collaboration. We all know that none of these services are going to be successful if they're trying to do this in a silo. And so really encouraging and requiring collaboration is going to be critical if we're going to see real outcomes. So I think that's something we all should, as we think for next steps and what does scoring look like, really hold those top of mind. So we have, Jessica did reduce the North Shore Senior Center to 90%, which then increased what we would have for support services, bringing us a little bit higher to $175,662 for that. Any other recommendations or changes, or are we ready to sort of begin voting on these individual items? I'm looking to see if anybody's physically raising their hand or electronically raising their hand. Derek.
Yeah, I'm for moving forward with the way it's allocated now. I guess my only process recommendation would be is, can we vote holistically for the entire recommendation as one, or do we need to go line by line?
What we have done historically when we've reached a point where we think everyone's in agreement is we read through them, and so that everybody's clear. And if there is no disagreement, then they can all be passed in one motion.
Got it.
I mean, I would support a recommendation to, at the very least, with North Shore Senior Center, award them at the average level. If there was any.
So the 23,750. Okay.
That makes more sense, Councilman Burns. I threw out the 90% number, but I think your approach is more logical. All right. Any other recommendations? All right. So then, Sarah, you read through each line so that to make sure we're all on the same page, and then we would vote as a package.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, so I'll start with case management. Youth and Opportunity United for case management, $57,693. James B. Moran Center for case management, $75,000. Infant Welfare Society for case management for the Teen Baby Nursery, $75,000. Family Focus case management, $125,000. Housing Authority of Cook County case management for Perlman and Waltrip buildings, $35,000. Metropolitan Family Services, $22,500. Moving into this, so a total category, total for the category of $390,193. Safety Net Services, Connections for the Homeless for drop-in and outreach services, $150,000. Youth Opportunity United for Safety Net Services, $63,427. James Moran Center for Legal Services, $50,000. Meals on Wheels for home delivered meals, $30,000. Interfaith Action for the Cold Weather Shelter, $42,500. YWC Evanston North Shore for their domestic violence and other services, $35,000. Peer Services for substance abuse treatment, $99,500. Books and Breakfast for the Before School program, $45,000. North Shore Senior Center for their social services programs, $23,750. Child Care Network of Evanston Learning Together, $63,400. Safety Net category subtotal of $602,577. And that leaves a total of, just scroll up a tiny bit, $178,912 for the support services category.
And we would need a motion to approve those allocation recommendations. Is that correct, Sarah?
Well, we have had a motion and a
Oh.
second, so I think technically we just need to take
I'm
a
sorry,
roll
don't
call
we need to
vote.
Move approval as amended.
Yes.
Oh,
because
that's
we just
true.
made
You're
it.
right, because it's approval as amended, because it's an amendment. Good point.
I
Yeah,
move
so-
approval as amended.
There you go.
Thank you, Councilmember Reed.
And do we have a second?
Second.
That was Derek.
And then a roll call vote?
Okay. Archana,
Aye.
Amanda,
Aye.
Cherie,
Aye.
Samantha,
Aye.
Councilmember Burns,
Aye.
Derek,
Aye.
okay, and Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, we got through the hardest part. Thank you all. It will get easier, and we really appreciate your patience as we work through this really pretty major changes in this year.
And before they hop off, congratulations to all the organizations that were funded.
Absolutely.
Good work.
And the recommendations of the committee will be going to council no later than the first meeting in November. We may try to expedite by going through APW or P&D to actually get it to council faster. We will confer with our management to see what seems the most appropriate route. We have that flexibility on this. So. All right. We've got.
All right. And then we go to the next. We have a few more items on the agenda. Approval of vice chair. So I believe we have a chair, but we do not yet have a vice chair. And Jessica, or Sarah, I can nominate. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I would like to nominate Derek to serve as vice chair. It's my understanding he is willing. Derek, is that correct?
Yes, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to say anything, but yes, I accept the nomination.
Wonderful. And
Do
then,
we need a motion for that? Okay,
We
motion
do.
approval.
thank you. And I need a second as well, I believe.
I'll second.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you, Archana.
And do we need a roll call or a voice vote on this?
Let's just do a roll call just because we're supposed to do that with virtual for the most part.
Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Aye, you're on mute.
Aye.
Amanda, thank you. Sheree?
Aye.
Samantha?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Okay, Derek?
Aye.
Okay, and Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Thank you.
All
Wonderful.
right.
And congratulations, Derek. And with that, we'll move to approval of the meeting minutes for September 28th, 2021. The meeting minutes were in the packet. Does anybody have any edits or comments, or are we ready to approve the minutes? If we are ready, I will just need a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Derek. Derek moves, and I need a second.
A second.
And Amanda seconds. And so a roll call vote for the minutes.
Okay, Archana?
Aye.
Okay, Amanda?
Aye.
Sheree?
Aye.
Samantha?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Okay, Derek?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Reed?
It's cutting out a bit, but aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, then we move to public comment. Do we need a motion to open for public comment? No.
No.
All right. Do we have anybody that would like to comment from the public today?
Anyone of the attendees who would like to comment can raise their hand, please. And we have Maureen McDonald. Can you? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. As a leader of one of the agencies you voted on tonight, I just wanted to thank you all for getting us this far in the process. As Amanda said, those funds are very needed, and we're all very grateful for you all getting us here. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other public comment, Sarah?
We have no other hands raised. We had a written public comment submitted that actually refers to a meeting that this committee is not involved with. And we're not sure that it's a public meeting. It was a meeting scheduled by one of the other council members, and we were going to contact that council member with information about that.
Got it. Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah, for that clarification. That's helpful. And with that, I believe we are a minute over. But without further comment, I do believe we'll need a motion to adjourn. Unless there's further discussion, of which.
No, I don't even think we need an official motion to adjourn.
Oh, wonderful.
You know what? I'm so sorry. Can I say one thing? We do have a new member joining us, Sheree Blackie. Would you?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry that I didn't introduce you at the beginning.
I think Councilman Reed, you were.
There's no further business, then meeting is over.
I had trouble hearing. Councilman Reed, was that on my connection or potentially it was on his? Okay, so Councilman Reed, I believe you were trying to make a point or a comment. It must have been, it was not clear, but we do want to make sure that we have a moment to introduce our newest committee member, Cherie. Jessica was about to do that. And then perhaps your connection will be better and we'll be able to hear your point.
I'm
I
sorry.
think
I
it was
must
just
have,
about leaving.
I think I have a bad connection. Can you hear? And I have a
I can-
mask on as well. Are you able to?
Oh, that sounds better. Yes. Maybe.
Yes. It seems as though I must have a big delay. Just move on. I was just making the point that when there's no further business, there does need to be a motion. We can just move on.
Perfect. Wonderful. But before we do that, we will have Cherie introduced and welcome to the process.
Do I have to say something?
Yes, I think we all did at the beginning when we were
Okay.
introduced. So very
Sure.
brief though.
No worries. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor in the state of Illinois and in Texas, and I've been an Evanston resident for about 20 years now.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Seeing no further business, thank you all for your time and effort today. And thank you for attendees and of course, organizations who continue to serve Evanston residents. We appreciate all you do for our community and have a wonderful Thursday evening.
Thank you so much,
you.
everyone.
Good
We
night.
really appreciate it.
Samantha, great job tonight, chairing. You're a natural.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.